Hey everyone, welcome to the Normalize Money project and show on our channel here at the Shared Housing Alliance by Katie's House Foundation. Today we're talking about budgeting. Julie is on with us. Hey Julie, how are you?
Good.
Good. So we just did our first live for talking about how to get a $10,000 grant. If you guys are tuning in to this piece of our channel, the playlist, and you want to go back over to that, please do so. And then right now we're going to kick off talking about basically budgeting. If you are somebody who's just starting out, meaning that you're 16, 17, 18, or you're starting over, so you're coming out of drug and alcohol recovery, or maybe a divorce, or a battered, individual, or human trafficking, or even aged out foster care, or even somebody who's on fixed income. Those are the people that Katie's House Foundation seeks to serve. And then our Shared Housing Alliance, everyone who's in this space in the United States. So anyway, this is for you if you're living in one of the houses or a shelter. And I can tell you that when we do the night class, the teenagers find this class to be the most heartbreaking because of how expensive everything is. So Julie, you have, I don't know if you want to talk about your family situation and basically, when you go from being a teenager to being on your own, how that goes, and you start realizing, right, food is so expensive.
Well, I actually have that going on right now with my daughter. She's in college, and she's responsible for certain expenses of hers. And I think she's finally realizing that, my contribution towards her income for the month is a lot more than probably what she imagined, So I think when you are in a certain situation and you're possibly not having to pay for certain bills, and then all of a sudden you're realizing, yeah, those are real expenses that you can't go without, that it gets to be, either something where as you get older and you retire and you have to take things away that you were used to having, and that it was no longer a luxury, it was a necessity. And yeah, I think, as we become teenagers to adults, we figure out very quickly if it's a luxury or a necessity. And I think having a written budget and having something that's written out gives you a better idea of where you have that emotional spending too, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just even having a written budget. I was so surprised when I was in loss mitigation back in 2010. I worked for a bank, and, people would say, modify my mortgage. I can't afford to make my housing payment. And we would say, well, give us your budget so we can look at what your expenses are. And truth, I believe the people, most of the people did not have them written down. And they had to take time to write it down and see, oh my gosh, I have all these other areas that I can cut out that I didn't realize. And so it's looking at your bank statement and seeing your subscriptions. And, people kind of go down. I feel like if we don't have this talk right now and they don't take it seriously, or as parents, we don't sit with the people who we love, whether that's, maybe you're even a child, and you're dealing with your elderly parent or something of that case. And you go through this budget, which I'm happy to send you this Excel spreadsheet. It's something that I built. It's very simple. In fact, let's go through it right now. But basically, how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you are and you look at the actual numbers?
Right. And I think as you pull this up and you start to look, that you'll start to see that, and I've got a couple of copies of different kinds. I gave my daughter a special one that I'll be happy to, kind of doctor and put on here too, is a monthly expense sheet, just because she isn't used to having to know exactly what she's going to spend her money on, because she's in that phase where she's deciding, she's got a new place to live. She's got new roommates. She's got, a pet. She's got this expense and that expense. And it's, where do I spend my money? Well, the end of the month, if I don't write it down, I don't know where it went. And if it's on the computer, yeah, I can download it, but do I really look at it? Probably not. So I'm actually making her keep track on a piece of paper for the month of everything that she spends, and kind of looking over it to see exactly, what is she spending her money on, because I'm providing that money, whereas if you and I we have a job, we're providing ourselves the money, and we know that, okay, what I brought in is what I can spend. But really, like you said, unless you actually have it written down and you're looking at what you're spending it on. So your little spreadsheet here underneath total, your income, is that everything that you're spending on monthly, groceries, gas?
Let me show you how this works. And you guys will need to email support@katieshousefoundation.org to request a copy of this. Or you can drop us a comment here and drop, you probably don't want to put your email online, but just email, and then I will return this to you. The way that this works is that you put in your income source. So let's say you have one job, or if you're married or something like that. So income number one for the first of the month, you might want to put in here, let's say that it's $1,200.
So you're going by monthly numbers?
Yes, this is monthly. So I'm going to use what I am familiar with as far as a starting wage in Arizona at, let's say, like a local restaurant, being a host or a hostess. And I know that if you work 35, 40 hours, this is probably about your take-home pay. And if you are not married and you have no other source of income, we're just going to leave it at that. And then we would come down here to the 15th of the month, and this is still the same income source, but if you're getting paid every 2 weeks, you probably got paid on the 1st and then around the 15th. And so we'll put in another $1,200, assuming that you didn't call out to go on vacation, or, you didn't use up all of your sick pay. And so that's how this works, is you put in your income. And if you have additional income, a side hustle, you can put that into number 2. Then you go through and let's just put in normal stuff. So rent. Let's say that you're renting a room or you're renting a bed, and maybe that is $800 and it includes your utilities. If you're just getting started in life and you're renting a room, from Katie's House Foundation or even on Craigslist, hopefully that's a okay scenario. As far as or pad split. I mean, when I talk about Craigslist and an okay scenario, I just mean that it's hard to know who the landlord is until you move in, because you don't know who they are.
Well, there's a lot of websites too nowadays that you can use to try to find roommates. So okay, so you're in a shared housing type situation.
Yeah. A roommate situation. Now, one thing that I do want to bring up, though, is that if your room rent doesn't include your utilities, that's perfectly fine. Just keep in mind that if you have, you're talking about electricity, gas, right? You have water and trash. And so, I mean, in San Diego, California, right now to rent a room, it's probably $1,000. Arizona is probably around $800. Birmingham, Alabama is probably around $700.
Are those prices for shared housing type things, or are those
well, I think shared housing, we need to define that. So this is on a per room, single room occupancy, is what I'm talking about here. So when we talk about double room occupancy, a lot of times it's actually the same price, because if you're in a double room occupancy situation, you probably have some type of outside care or care coming in, like a house manager that's being compensated to oversee the 2 people in the room. Like even if you're in a dorm, right? You probably have somebody that's being compensated to manage the house. So, but for this purpose, I'm going to say you're 17 years old, going to be 18. You're a host at a restaurant. You've got to pay $800 a month for the room. It doesn't include your electricity for, let's say, $50. Your gas is maybe, I don't know, $15. Your water and trash is maybe $50. Now, the thing that I just wanted to point out is that I was so surprised by the cost of electricity in Birmingham, Alabama in winter. I couldn't believe the 12-month, the trailing 12 in winter could go from $250 a month for the house to $900 a month in winter. And so if you are planning on moving somewhere, you really need to ask about the fluctuation in the utility expenses. And if you are renting out a house or a nonprofit and you have housing involved, you certainly need to pay a lot of attention to that trailing 12 month and those utilities. So that way you can average out the rent that you're collecting to make sure that you don't have an issue with, basically sustainability. Okay, so moving on, when we do this in the night class, all the kids will say something like, what about my Hulu? What about my Starbucks? What about my cell phone?
Well, cell phone's very important, but some of these other things are, like I said, they become necessities, right? They start out as luxuries, but they become necessities. I would say like Spotify or Apple Music or one of those is probably very, very common in the fact that it's no longer a luxury. It's a necessity for this generation.
Yeah. So here we're just putting in, I think, a few different things. I mean, this of course could be Netflix, right? Pick which one you want.
Streaming service. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's kind of some kind of a streaming. And then you said definitely Spotify. I hear a lot. So now let's just plug in what these are. If you guys are listening, feel free to post a comment and tell me if my numbers are wrong. So I'm going to put in maybe $10 for streaming of TV. I have no idea how much people pay for Starbucks because I don't do that.
I would average maybe $25 a month.
One coffee at Starbucks right now
is
like $12.
I know. So if you bought 2 a month, that'd be $24.
They go every day, every morning.
Well, I don't know how you can afford that. And I, being the police officer, used to go to Starbucks all the time, but I was buying a tea. So I was paying a little bit more than the average, like McDonald's or one of those. But I, of course, got smart and joined the SIP club at Panera so that I wouldn't have to pay for something every day. I paid for it for the month and that was it. So I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of money each month for their Starbucks. But if you putting $50, I mean,
okay, so we'll say $10 for a drink, and then people want to buy something to eat. So I would say a Starbucks trip for one person one time is easily $18 or $20. So I guess, I would say once a week they want to go, and I would use $80.
Okay.
And your cell phone, I don't know what kind of plan.
I just cut you off. If that was me, you were my kid, I'd cut you off.
Oh my gosh, our triplets, our little ones, Irish triplets, right? The twins are 6 and Liam is 7, and they want to go to Starbucks all the time. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I'm sure somebody on YouTube is trying to get my little kids to go to Starbucks all the time. So.
Oh no.
All right. Cell phone. I don't know. How much does a normal one-person cell phone cost these days?
You and I own businesses, so therefore we get better pricing and we have, bigger plans. But I would say it's probably on average maybe $40, $50 a month.
Okay, I'm going to put in 50 because of the taxes. And then a car, I'll tell you, my son wants to buy a car and it's $10,000, after the registration and the transfer. And that's been putting down a down payment of $3,000, which, I had previously said in one of our other videos, I'm not a fan of you guys, if you only have $3,000 to your name, giving that to a dealership for a car. You definitely need a car, is my opinion, to get to work, a reliable car, not a cheap car that's going to break all the time. And so the point is that if you normally put down $0, your payment doesn't change that much. So I'm just going to go, he told me it was $300.
Okay. Well, that to me would be, like you said, if you're trying to, average out something, and that would be, something is better than nothing.
Now, when we called for insurance, because he's a brand new driver, it's $288 a month.
That's a young driver, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And a male, so female might be a little bit cheaper, a little bit more
Yeah.
responsible. Okay.
And, you know, I told him that I think it's worth that as far as him buying a nicer car, because, right, if you have your car paid off, then you don't necessarily have to have full coverage because you're not insuring you don't need full coverage. You can get like the cheapest insurance and the minimum. But the truth is then you're dealing with a car that maybe isn't in the best quality. And also you had to save up all that cash that could have been leveraged for something else. And so anyhow, moving on to fuel, you know, I told him probably $300 a month is what I think he'll spend. What do you think for fuel every month if you're just...
Well, I don't want to get into current politics and trends, but I have noticed that the gas prices have gone up. So for a while, I had my daughter at not a whole lot. I'd say $100, $120, but I think now I gotta have her at like 200 because she's not driving as far as some other people. So it depends what you're, you know, her to go to school is not as far maybe as, you know, or it doesn't take as much fuel. So.
Okay. So I'm going to use $250 for insurance. You know, maybe it's a new female driver, or maybe you've had an accident or some tickets. We'll use $200 a month for fuel, which to me seems really cheap. That's $50 over 4 weeks. There's 4.3 weeks in a month is how we do it at most underwriting at banks. So anyhow, we'll just use 4 weeks. Food. I mean, I know some people who can get away with buying no meat and no chicken, no dairy, no cheese. They literally just live off of starch.
Well, we're not beans and rice, as they say in one of the groups that I follow. So I heard that you could go like $75 a week for a person. So I would say that that's a fair number.
All right. So we're going to go with 600.
I guess you could probably, you think you could lower that by 100?
No, I think food is
$75 a week. Okay. Well, I mean, that's what I was told on average, and that's not a huge number. That's not an extravagant number, but it's not a beans and rice number. It's $75 a person per week.
Okay. So just so you guys know, the way that this spreadsheet works is that we're actually going to end up coming down here and talking about your bills for the second half of the month. And so with that in mind, we would want to split up some of this stuff. Most of this you only pay once a month, but things like Starbucks would be split. And then your fuel would be split half in the first 2 weeks of the month. And then food, we're going to go $300 for the first 2 weeks of the month. And then your Spotify, I don't know how much that costs, $15 a month maybe. So, so you can see what happens here. You know, this is $1,200 take home pay, working 35 to 40 hours a week as a host or a hostess at the local restaurant. You know, I think this is completely reasonable for someone who's just starting out or starting over and they're having to go to an intensive outpatient program. You know, they're having to go 9 hours a week, which means they're probably working in the nights. If you are on Social Security or Social Security disability income, me working in banking for, 20 years or what, you should be getting $1,200 for sure. Now, the thing here is that you must keep a budget. There's no credit card payment in here. There's no Christmas. There's no savings, no birthdays, not for the people you love.
I'm just talking savings when it's, like you said, birthdays, unexpected, expenses, the tire gets flat. You got to put a plug in it, that might cost you $25. You're not even saving for something like that.
Yeah. So there's literally no room to move. You have
right now you're netting $20, right? Okay.
Yeah. This is for the first 2 weeks of the month.
Okay.
So if you're my son and you move out of the house and you want to sustain this lifestyle, you better watch your pennies.
Starbucks.
Yeah, you better watch your Starbucks for sure, because don't come asking me for $200 at the end of the month to pay your rent for next month. So moving on, now, you've got another $1,200 that comes in on the 15th of the month, but we know you're going to have,
More
fuel and food, because we had cut those in half. So we said fuel was 100, every 2 weeks, and food we said was 300 every 2 weeks. And now maybe on the second half of the month, you can build in something like a savings account where you drop 300 into, your savings account, and hopefully it's returning you 5% on your money, or even into some kind of an investment. And then you need to have a rainy day fund, like for the tire, that definitely you're going to have to replace your tires every couple years. You're going to have house maintenance. You're going to have just birthdays and Christmas. And
well,
so
how about like personal care or items like that, shampoo and just some of the stuff that, you and I, clothes, shoes. I mean, not that you need those every day, but yeah, I mean, you got to have a plan. You can't just, I want to buy a new set of, I have to get a new pair of work boots. I'm to the point where my feet hurt, so it's like, yeah, you got to have certain things set aside so that, when the time comes, you're not taking off that $20, the only thing you had left to buy those shoes.
Yeah. So this is where we're at, throw some money in savings. You have your rainy day maintenance stuff. Personal care, $100 a month. That's only $25 a week for, I don't know, if you get your nails done, girls, we know that's $100. If you get your hair done, you're probably at $200 just to get your hair color and cut anywhere in the country for long hair, unless you're going to just the local, cost cutters for $20 and hoping that you come out okay. Which you might. There's some good people there. So anyway, movies, luxuries, $100. But basically at the end, you've got $200 to your name for a credit card.
Actually, as you Eliza say, that actually, like I would tell you to apply for a credit card and have some credit on there so that if something does happen, that extra $200 is going to go to paying off, whatever it is that you spent, your rainy day and all that other stuff. So,
well, in the case of a credit card, I mean, that should be a wash, in my opinion, because if you put, let's just say, your movies on your credit card, and then you put $100 a month, and then you take your 100 and you pay it off in full. But you and I talk about having 3 trade lines that you keep open and active and paying on time. And so, that would be your credit card, which you're paying in full, which we just talked about. There's no change to your budget there. You're not actually driving up a balance that you can't pay off. And then you're financing your car. That's another trade line. Probably going to get a 60-month loan on that, which it's up to you. But if you want to keep your payment down, you could do a 5-year loan. They even do 6-year loans. Some people want to do a 3-year. It's completely up to you. Just know that if you lose your job or you quit your job, you're going to have that much higher of a payment that you have to have savings for. And so you probably would want to get another credit card that you're using. Maybe you use it just for food, in which case, again, you want it to be a wash. Yeah,
exactly. So let me ask you this. So we're looking at this budget and we're saying, okay, you got to keep track. You got to know what you're coming in, what you're coming out. What do you tell people that have started over, that have debt already, that they are trying to pay off, but yet they're still trying to make enough to get by? I mean, other than we've already said, I think your best option is a shared housing situation where you're not doling out the entire $1,200 of your income to pay for your housing. So what would you tell people, for this budget type, situation with a new 16-year-old coming out what is the best, way to put yourself in a situation? I know you just talked about the trade lines and the, getting yourself a better credit score, getting yourself that better loan for that car. What else can they do that will help them get in a situation where they don't spend the money on the credit card, when the egg prices go up, and they don't spend the money that they don't make if they have to miss a day?
Well, you really only have two ways to increase your disposable income or your cash flow. Either you drive up your income or you drive down your expenses. Those are the only two options. So, you can have a side hustle on Lyft or reading scripts on Upwork. There's so much that's available for a side hustle. I definitely like Upwork for that kind of stuff. I think that you can call your credit card companies and ask them if they have a 0% offer. So a lot of times if you have a credit card and you'll get 0% for the first 12 or 15 months, and then you'll run that time out. And if you are carrying a balance because of Christmas and birthday or something, or an emergency where you didn't have any disposable income, that would be a good time to see if either they or online you want to open up a new credit card at 0% and save. Because once those credit cards change, they're normally, they go from 0 to 20% or something.
Oh, well, some of them are sitting at 30 right now. Where our interest rates are off the charts. I think it is really, I'm not going into some of the current events, but yeah, the credit card spending right now is really, really high for everyday, like I said before, that Starbucks is no longer a luxury for that person. It's a necessity. That's what they go to every day. They got to have their caffeine. Well, they're putting those on the credit cards, because how can you afford $80 a month on $1,200, income?
No, you have to. They say that once you live a certain lifestyle, it's hard to change, right? To take away these things that you're talking about, like Starbucks and things like that. But you can adopt replacements. And so for me, I get the organic instant coffee. I think it's $8 for 240 cups. And that's how I find it is fine with some whipped cream or whatever. So there are, of course, alternatives. You like to eat sushi. Well, you only get to go once a month. That's your $220 if you go with a couple girlfriends and you pay for them because you want to be nice. You don't have to go to sushi, right? You could definitely go somewhere else that's a lot less expensive. So these are just things to keep in mind as the alternatives, but having the budget like we're doing right now is the first step, and then looking at it every month. And so we're going to talk about that as the class continues. This is a formal 30-hour class that we normally do over the course of several weeks in night school, but of course we're bringing it online. And so we're going to continue the conversation about how important it is to make sure that you're looking backwards at what you actually did last month, and you're checking off this list and you're seeing, oh my gosh, my Starbucks wasn't $80, it was $500. Or hey, what about a fraudulent charge that somebody from Sephora online threw at you?
Yeah. So, obviously we're, starting with either people starting over or the teenagers that we teach in the night class. So yeah, let's continue this conversation, because, and I challenge any of those people watching to, as a new teenager, get something that either, we're offering, or something that you found that you like, that you can use to document what you are spending your money on. Where are you getting your money from, and where is it going? And a lot of times you'll really see what your cash flow is, right? Because really that disposable income at the end that you're talking about is what we call cash flow. And that cash flow can make a big difference on where you're spending you're spinning your wheels or not.
Yeah. And other things that we're going to need to discuss too are taxes. So in this scenario, this individual is going to have to file their tax return. And I don't know how many they're claiming, but I would say that they're probably going to pay in a fair amount, and then they're probably going to get back, like 10%, 20%, I'm not sure. But maybe they end up getting back $1,000 or $2,000 in April, which is why they should want to file their tax return to get that $2,000. So there's a lot of layers to all of this. People are scared to get started, but once you take control of it, you become empowered because you know that you're going to get money in March or April, that kind of stuff, right?
I think one of the bigger things too, that when you're talking about the taxes and you're talking about deductions, I think learning about doing a budget and learning what a budget is and how to do a budget is a lot less intimidating, and knowing how to fill out your tax papers when you get your job to know what your deductions are going to be, because we talk about zero deductions, 1, 2, they don't do that anymore. It's so confusing. So yeah, we're going to have a discussion about taxes, because that's something too, that when you go to get your job, or when you're in your job currently and you go to get your taxes filed and you're finding out that I didn't put enough taxes in, I have to owe money,
Right.
Nobody, a lot of people don't want to hear that, they can't hear that. They don't know what to do. So
And the other thing too is your savings. I'll just tell you guys, when our son was 16, we basically took his savings. He was taking the night class, and we will cover it in this class, but basically the top 10 stocks over the course of the last, I think it was 100 years, or since it's all been tracked, during a recession. And so he was able to pick one of those with our guidance after looking at those top 10. And he picked one. I agreed with him, and he doubled his money. And so that was a year ago, well, about 18 months ago, when everyone was saying, Kirsten, you're teaching this night class. You're crazy for encouraging people to invest in the stock market. This is some of my friends. And the thing is it's up to them. I'm not encouraging really anyone to do any particular thing, but we have to talk about the options, because if you have $300 savings a month, is it making zero, or is that money working for you? And so in his scenario, he actually followed that stock every day. Is it up? Is it down? What's happening with it? He picked it. It was his baby, right? And then he said, I want to cash it out. I'm up. Now, I'll tell you, it went up considerably the next day, and he was awfully frustrated, but he should have been keeping an eye on what was happening. The point is that he doubled his money during a down time.
And when we talk about savings, and we can have a more in-depth conversation about that when we cover that in the class, is that I wouldn't tell anybody that if you are trying to invest, right? You're trying to take that savings that you had and you're trying to invest it to make more money, that you invest in something that like, and understand. And so for you to kind of challenge him to learn about the stock market and to learn about that stock and to pick one, made it so that he did those 3 things. He knew, he liked it, and he understood, so that was good. That's good. I would, like you said, your friends thought you were crazy, but you're actually giving an opportunity to somebody and making it fun. So that's good to hear.
And when you look back over it, again, you have to look at the data. And that's what it is. If you're a day trader, anyway, we'll get into all that stuff later. I'm glad that we're going through budgeting, but you had asked about like what people can do. Of course, driving down an interest rate would be great to save on your monthly payments if you're carrying balances. Investing your money is always great in a way that you feel comfortable doing by doing some research on whatever it is and not just listening to, somebody tell you to do something. All right. Well, this is what I have for today. If anybody wants a copy of the spreadsheet so that way they can use it, it's super simple. You can, of course, always change it, for your life is going to be changing for the next 80 years or however long you live. So, Julie, anything else?
No, I look forward to the next live session. So come back, join us, make comments. We'll always be here to comment back. And like she said, if you need a budget sheet like this, give us an email. We'll happily accommodate you.
Yeah. Oh, one thing, and I know we were going to sign off, but I just want to say, when you have 2 income sources, like a spouse or a side hustle, it can make all the difference. And so for people thinking that, that they don't want that, or that having roommates can be difficult, when you have a whole bunch of money coming in and you love someone, or you like someone, or you tolerate someone, like roommates or something, that is always an option. And so I will leave it with that. And thank you guys for joining.
Have a great day.